Very much for inspirational talks, Analisa and Sze. Sze, you mentioned here a couple of things that I feel very close by. I was years back in Vevey in the headquarters of Nestle. I think everybody should visit that place to get the idea of what it's all about. Nestle also, I think, sometimes gets in a wrong way certain reputation. And coming here in Korea, the fermentation, I think, that's kind of like a key to our health. I want to introduce that to my closest circle and try to make people understand it better. So we have a lesson here also. So your way of reinventing things is very, very important. So I think these two are also examples that there's a plenty of topics to address in our discussion here in the two sessions that we are going to have here tonight. So audience, please engage in the discussion. You will be able to raise your questions online at the live stream website using Slido. We will select some of the questions and bring them to the conversation in the end of the session. We count on your input for a fruitful and dynamic discussion, so don't be shy. Then I would like to bring you, Frode, to our discussion. Your country always inspires me, by the way. I spent there 3 years, and it's in my heart. So there are lots of things that come close from your, but you have one very special thing. I would say that the timing of tonight's topic is very timely, because less than a month ago, the Nobel Peace Prize Committee decided or then gave the award to the World Food Programme, as it says, for its efforts to combat hunger, for its contribution to bettering conditions for peace in conflict-affected areas, and for acting as a driving force in efforts to prevent the use of hunger as a weapon of war and conflict. I'm a former peace mediator by myself. This is very important message that one also the Nobel Peace Prize Committee shows some innovative approach to this, in this field. Norway is globally recognized and hosted for this prize that I mentioned. The most prestigious and influential award on the planet. Actually, you gave it once to us too, with Martti Ahtisaari.
That's correct.
Would you care to share any insights and perspective on this year's award winner and what is all behind?
Thank you very much, Pekka. Thank you for the introduction as well, and I'm happy that you think so highly of us. It's very vice versa, you know, Pekka. I really appreciate the close cooperation, and it's a good sign of the Nordic cooperation, of course, as well. I think maybe one key element is in awarding this year's Peace Prize is to ensure the fact that hunger, food, that's also safety. It is closely connected with peace. If you have a hungry population, safety and peace is absolutely threatened. And I think, as we have touched upon several times today, ensuring that a growing global population has access to sustainably produced, healthy and enough food, that is a key challenge and something that we just have to follow up. I think even before COVID-19, which is of course on everybody's lips now, if my numbers are correct, 1 in 9 people around the world went to bed hungry. And 1 of 3 suffered from malnutrition. And according to the United Nations, that number will double now after the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think therefore this year's Peace Prize and the award, it underlines and underscores the need for us to work together, and that multilateral organizations can play a crucial part in overcome this, not only the present crisis, but also future crisis, and everything related to hunger and malnutrition. And as we have heard, we have to do changes. We have to produce food in a different way than we have done before. We have to enable ourselves to feed a growing population that will, in a few years, be 10 billion people. We have talked about we will touch upon many different topics tonight. We have mentioned insects, grass. I mean, there are lots of different areas where we can produce more. One key area for us is, of course, seafood, which Norway claims to be one of the foremost providers of seafood in the world. And we have to produce more from the oceans as well. And according to a report by the high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy, if we can manage the oceans in a sustainable way, the oceans will be able to provide us 6 times the amount of food as it does today. And that is actually 2/3 of the proteins that we need with the population that we foresee in 2050. So it's a huge possibility. And I think all of us, we have to use all these possibilities and to ensure that we have enough food and that we can ensure safety. But maybe just the key take, perhaps, is one of the key takes, that food is also safety and peace, but also maybe in these, let's say, pandemic times, but also in a situation that is a little bit, we see a changing global village with some dramatic changes that we need to face. And therefore, I think perhaps, especially this year, to give the Peace Prize to a multilateral organization that underlines the need for global cooperation. And I don't think I can underline that strongly enough. Global cooperation, that is key to ensure our peace and our safety.
Thank you for those insights, Frode. I know that your country pays lots of emphasis on the questions that you raise up here. Then I think I would like to draw all you panelists to this discussion on certain topics that have come up here so far. Globally, the food production is the largest driver of environmental change, and unhealthy diets is the other leading cause of poor health. We know that. And switching the focus to the challenges in developed countries like the Nordic countries and the Korea, what do you see the biggest challenges to overcome among us, and what we should do better? Then the second question would be that it requires our dietary habits, improving food production and reducing waste. These are all like huge questions. Do you think it's possible to solve these multifaceted challenges alone? How should we do this? Third question, what are the challenges of creating an ecosystem that can tackle the challenges in your respective parts of the world? And what are the roles of big corporates such as CJ in this one? COVID-19 has been mentioned here already, but during the pandemic, technologies have played a crucial role in keeping our society functional. Which technologies and strategies you in the food and retail sectors think that we should highlight that will stay also with us post-COVID? So I throw these questions to you, and you can maybe pick up whatever you feel most comfortable with. Actually, I would like to start with you, Lisa, because you are not present in this room. So, and I guess you are very excited in New York right now, how the future will look like for all of us. So please, Lisa, go ahead.
Is your microphone muted? Can you hear us?
I unmuted myself now.
Now it's fine.
There you go. Well, I said, first of all, thanks for the great questions and for leading the discussion today. I'm not sure if it got to mention it, but in the podcast that I host, I ask every single person what's the vision they want to see in the future, and then I ask what we're missing to get there. And the number one answer that has come up in every single episode is that we need more collaboration and cooperation. And that is something that each and every person states. And then when I dig deeper and I say, well, why aren't we doing it? Or what do we need to do it? What they tell me is, you know, that's like another full-time job on top of the job that I have. Or I'm not quite sure it's my responsibility. Or, you know, who do I contact? Who do I talk to? So I think related to what are the challenges that we face and what's it going to take to handle these big multifaceted problems, it is so much talking to each other. And I think it's going to require that we have sessions like these, or even professional ecosystem developers who help to bring the right stakeholders around the table to talk about the challenges we have and the opportunities for partnership.
Thank you, Lisa. What about you?
Well, maybe I'll address the question about the challenges in developed countries, such as in Korea. I mean, basically, you know, in terms of what I mentioned earlier, food consumption, food is becoming a kind of a lifestyle. It's becoming a kind of, it's about pleasure. It's about, you know, a lifestyle, and sometimes even who, you know, it represents who you stand for, what you believe in. So in the developed country, unfortunately, it also, you know, basically challenges is to influence these consumers, to make them understand that somehow there need to be a compromise. That yes, food is there to give you, for nutrition, it's for indulgence, for sharing with your friends, but on the other hand, you know, basically we need to think about how you consume the food. Just take, for example, you know, plastics. Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't need to mention about the issue, you know, from all the plastics, from, you know, from consumption of food. But one thing is, plastics is needed to protect food, to keep them safe, to preserve them to a certain extent. So basically the challenge of the food industry is how do we still give basically meet up to the demand of the consumers who are basically asking for more and more food to taste good, to be convenient and everything, and basically, you know, and how to address this balance of things on, you know, to cut down the plastics use. So I think this is something that, you know, we need to collaborate as the industry, and it's not just CheilJedang doing it alone, or Unilever or Nestle. I think as an industry, food industry, we have the responsibility to collaborate and accelerate the research in such area. Because at the end of the day, this is for the sustainability of our planet, and, you know, and this is not just, we shouldn't take this in silo or in competition. And I think this is something that's a big challenge, and that I think I totally agree with you, Analisa, on the collaboration part. But you know, in terms of the food industry, we'll probably need to also better communicate and educate our consumers, and basically also link with farmers, local farmers, small medium enterprises, government policies. You know, I think we need to connect that, you know, with a common purpose. And having said this, I think, you know, I just have to emphasize that it's actually inspiring and humbling with this the Nobel Peace Prize that you spoke about, Ambassador, because I think, you know, now during the pandemic, I believe that every single one of us has experienced, to be fair, nano fraction of what does food security means. I think we are still privileged. But I hope that this actually is an experience to every one of us, and basically to take up the action and do our part. So
it's easy to agree with you, Frode.
Yeah, well, just maybe a comment, because I think it's our job as diplomats perhaps to try to identify, even in bad times, try to identify what can we learn, what can we do better, what can we take out of good things from this. And I think you pointed on a few things also, that we have to use the pandemic and we have to use these changes to become better. And I think whether it's waste or it's climate change, changing ecosystems, the use of plastic, I fully support your approach with regard to that we have to work together. Industry has to change. But I also would like to sort of motivate ourselves, all of you here and all of you who are following this on your screens back home, whether it's climate change or less use of plastic or to reduce food waste, we have to start with ourselves. And I think sometimes we have a tendency to think that, okay, Policy must change. Politicians must do something. The society must do something. Food producers must do something. But we have to change. We have to demand, and we have to throw away less food. We have to use less plastic. We have to demand more climate-friendly plastic materials. So I think also one important element to face these challenges is that we have to go in ourselves and change our behavior. And I think 2020 and 2021 would be the year where we cannot let things just slide anymore. We have to do something individually.
Yeah, I think we all realize that this is an investment, that what we are talking about here, to find the new ways, we cannot look at it as a cost. It's an investment that we need to do right now. So that's where the urgency comes from. But I think this could be maybe the right time to find some questions if we have received some. So please, do we have some questions?
Thank you. I start with the first question, which I think is for all the speakers. What are your thoughts on securing food security, learning from COVID-19 and the potential breakdown of global supply chains?
Analisa, maybe you can start again.
Sure. So I think COVID-19 has been humbling for many people, as was already mentioned, that we realize what food security is and what it can be, as well as how globally interconnected we are. And I know the experience has been different in many different countries where I believe that we're going to see a greater return to the local food system and a focus on what can I source locally versus what do I need to source globally. And a closer look at that as food security becomes front and center of many national policies, and many countries are looking not only to diversify where they're getting their food from, but also what can they do at home. Just as much with that, I think that we've seen a lot of people take the time now to slow down, and you've seen the shelves selling out with flour and with butter and other things as they bake more at home or they cook more at home, that we're also starting to see healthier eating habits in some regards. And then at the same time, I've also heard plenty of stories of people eating out. But I don't think we've quite known exactly what is going to happen in this space or how it's going to affect the future. I don't have a very transparent way of moving food or even a very efficient one. That's part of my Maersk example that they're really trying to tackle. And speaking just a little bit about the future, when I do this survey of what people want to see, a lot of it is trust. People still don't quite trust the food system, and I think this exasperated the fact that they have every reason, not to. We have a lot of work to do to ensure that we have healthy and sustainable food in the future and that we have safe flows of food. Thanks.
Thank you, Analisa. And Sze, what could you?
I think Lisa has actually answered most of my thoughts. I would probably I would actually think that one thing that the post-pandemic, maybe it's more in the developed countries, this whole thing about online shopping, online food delivery, I'm not sure which way it's going to turn. Basically, food companies might be happy, but the thing is that it will probably generate more waste because of packing, and so it's just ironical. But and this is something we need to be vigilant about, or basically, it's we can't leave it as status quo, because I think you will escalate quite a big time. But on the other hand, this whole online, the digital transformation, actually also, would be, we can leverage that, to better, to have better prediction for less food waste along the value chain. So basically, it's always a balance of both. How we actually leverage and mitigate the situation.
Well, I think you have touched upon, I don't have much to add, but I would also perhaps just underline that so far the global supply chains have worked pretty good. So that's one maybe a good take from this as well, that basically it has been working, but I think we have realized how vulnerable everything is, and we might not be in the same situation when the next crisis hits us. So we have to I think we have to build up resilience and find systems. But I would also like to just underline the importance that the global cooperation actually have been working quite well, and that the supply chains, both food supplies as well as medical supplies, have been working quite well during the pandemic. But that doesn't mean that we can relax. We have to make sure that these systems continue to be resilient.
I don't know whether we have more time for questions. Maybe we have. So could you please ask the next question?
What can we do to minimize food loss? Which part of the supply chain, from farm to fork, should be of focus, and who should initiate the issue?
Food loss solutions, Analisa. How do you see it from that side of the Atlantic?
Well, I have to say that I still believe the same, that the biggest problems are the biggest opportunities, and the answer to that question is it's not one person's responsibility. We can all do something, whether that's that you start composting at home, or if you look at some of the bigger providers, there's so many examples now of the ways that people are trying to prevent food waste, whether that's from extending shelf life to figuring out how you can dispose of food or pass food on further down the supply chain if it's still good to eat, but you can't still sell it in the stores. So I think people are picking up a lot of responsibility, and I actually think in the Nordics this is one of the areas that's moving the fastest, greatest amount of attention when it comes to different initiatives. Another good example is Too Good To Go, that's quickly expanding globally. But I think everybody has a role to play in that, and it's also just a matter of mindfulness. You know, if you look in your own fridge, how much are you buying each week versus how much are you throwing away? Are you really eating everything that you purchase? Same when you go out to eat. And what can you do to challenge the assumptions that are in your world?
Very good. I could just add to that like in typical working place, like foreign ministry in Helsinki, so we started discussion in the net about how, when we go to cantina, about food waste. So I think that attitude also counts. When the discussion is there, people start changing their behavior also. You don't feel good when the discussion is there in the net about these issues. So what we say and what we do in our closest circles really delivers. But Shu, could you add something more on this?
Well, I think it's, I very much agree with what both of you mentioned. It's really about mindfulness and taking a little step ourselves, each and every one of us. For example, like, the type of vegetable, fruit that we use, does it need to be the perfect carrot or the perfect apple? I mean, so these are things that we can take individual action to say this, to maybe in Korea you start saying to buy the grade 2 kind of carrots, which I see that it's starting in the community, that people are now starting to say there's a grade 2, this carrot doesn't look perfect, but it's still a carrot and it's perfectly all right. And I think these are the little things that we should encourage each other to do.
Exactly. Do we still have something there?
We do.
It seems we do. We have a very busy audience tonight.
How do we bring sustainable food to the less privileged parts of society?
All right. The less privileged side of the society. We in Nordics, we talk a lot about equality and how everybody should be able to make it. So, Analisa, you are part of the Nordics. How we can do this to take everybody on board?
I think that's an awesome question, and one that we should all be thinking about. I think it first starts with recognizing that what is healthy and sustainable is different in every part of the world, and it isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. So we had mentioned fermentation earlier in this discussion, and fermentation is an awesome way of delivering healthy foods that are good for the gut microbiome, and that's actually a very rich part of many countries' food heritage, but one that hasn't necessarily been talked about in the way it is now. So it's one way of saying we can do a lot to preserve food. I think there's also a lot at looking at how do we empower different local food systems again to say it's not necessarily about just delivering the food, it's about enabling people to grow the food or to have it within their own country. So I still think there's a lot of moves we can take to, one, look at what is a healthy, sustainable, diverse diet that delivers the nutrients that you need and also is good for the planet or the earth that it's coming from. And then to that point, what else can we do to make sure that those flows continue to go. So if we end up in another crisis or have another issue, it doesn't stop flowing in one place compared to another. Because you've definitely seen that inequality now throughout the last year and before.
So looking at it from the different direction, that probably, we see a lot of startups that's happening, and but not so many in the developing countries. And I think this is also one aspect where we see how we can encourage more startups in the developing country, where they can encourage local usage of food and educate. Basically these are local raw materials which can address the different nutrition needs of the local community. And I would imagine this is something I would like to see happening more.
I might just briefly add, Pekka, I think this must be an integral part of our cooperation policy with developing countries. We need a holistic view. We need to incorporate this as a part that not only one ministry, but several ministries look at together. So it has to be an important and integral part of our policies. Then we of course have to make sure there are sustainable food being exported to less developed countries even today, but of course we need to make sure that it can be produced sustainably and locally as well. So close partnership, I think, is one of the key answers.
Very good.
And can I add
yes, please.
One more thing, maybe, if there's time? So there's a good example too of some years ago in Haiti when there was a crisis there. We imported a lot of rice, and that ended up destroying the rice infrastructure that was there because they had tons of rice farmers. So I think while global trade is important, it's again taking a step back and looking at what are the strengths of that country and where can they excel, or that food system, and then where do you need to supplement it. So if you imagine a big puzzle piece, it's about how the different parts fit together and making sure that it is a win-win for everybody.
And I would maybe just add final points, the education. It's education of the local people on how to ferment food, how to farm, so basically I think this is something that we can help them, or we should.
I think we have been discussing very many crucial issues for our future here tonight. Just last round, couple of words, what you would like to say to us and you who are listening and who you are watching, what we should take out of this discussion. Analisa, again, you are privileged to say the first words.
Yes, thank you so much. So I think one of the biggest takeaways and one of the things I keep in the back of my mind every day is that 85% of the jobs in 2030 do not exist yet. And already now in the past year, we've seen how much our world is changing and how quickly it's transforming, and that we all need to step up and rise to whatever is coming our way. So in all the questions we've asked tonight and discussing what the future could be or how we're going to address the challenges we have, I think it's important to keep in mind that the future does not exist yet. You can create the job in the future you want to see. You have every opportunity. So just do it.
Thank you. And she?
And from the perspective of the role of a large corporation like ourselves, it's about influence, communicate, collaborate among the industry, within the industry, and across the value chain, stand in solidarity, to address this vulnerable food system.
Well, I'll be very brief, Pekka. I'm just underline the need for cooperation, holistic approaches. We have to work together, politicians, countries, industry, and ourselves, each and every one of us. And I think if we can do that, we can, through cooperation, we can do anything. But maybe also that, as I said in my previous statement, start with yourself, see what you can do, and try to act consciously, reduce waste, and throw away less food.
I thank you all for this discussion. I think at least I am inspired of the ideas that, because these are so kind of like a basic things, but we too few times really delve a little bit deeper and start discussing about the way how we have done it here tonight. I think this was a great example of how this discussion between Nordics and Korea, we share the values, we share the challenges, so we can do things together. And this is the food and the questions around it are really key issues for the future. So thank you for all. We are going to have now a short break before the next session of the Nordic Talks. Thank you for everybody.
Thank you.